Welcome everybody. Hello, hello.
Anna, always appreciate the music.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Ati. Hi, Alice. Today is the Moldau by Smetana, and it is a programmatic piece that is about a river, which you can kind of tell with the I have a notice here asking to a request to record this meeting, Paulo's Autopilot. Paulo's Autopilot? Not sure who that is, but we are recording it, so I'll deny that request and you can get the recording later. Welcome, welcome. We are expecting, I think, about 16, 17 people. So we'll give it another couple minutes.
The music is very dramatic. It's like Swan Lake.
It's one of my favorites. Something a little bit different than the last few sessions. Noted, Jason. Welcome, welcome. Give it one more minute. This more of dramatic part of the piece, and then we'll move on. All right. We've got 16 people. Welcome, everybody. Thank you again, as always, for coming to these convenings, and especially on a Friday afternoon. We wanted to change up the time a little bit just to accommodate some other availabilities. So thanks for being flexible. I'm going to quickly introduce myself, and then because we only have 17 people, I think we can actually go around the room and do like a 20-second intro. Just saying your name and your organization if you'd like, and maybe very briefly like what brings you into the food garden space. So we'll popcorn it. And I'll start. My name is Anna Mines. I'm the Community Gardens Project Manager with the City and County of Honolulu's Parks Department Community Gardening Program. And I'm here in partnership with Hui Māla to facilitate these conversations around food gardens and increasing access to food gardens. And I will popcorn it over to Melody, and I'll put a list of names in the chat.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Melody, and I am with Ho'ola'aina Pili Pili. We're an accessible school and community garden site, and we're going to be presenting today a little bit about our garden, which is an inclusive design and community kind of feedback and impact so far. And I'll pass it to Alex, who I'm presenting with today.
Aloha, kako. My name is Alex Narajos. I am the Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems Program Manager for the City and County's Office of Economic Revitalization. And I also am previously a graduate assistant with Ho'ola'aina Pili Pili, which I'll also be presenting about today. Sorry, I'll pass it to Ati is next to me.
I am putting the names in the chat so that we can follow an order. So I'm going to actually pass it to Alice. Sorry.
Okay.
Make sure we don't miss anybody. And then we'll go to Ati.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alice Liu. I'm the Food System Program Manager with Hi-Fi. I joined in April, and the reason I'm here because I believe urban agriculture is essential for food system change. Mahalo. Who's the next?
I think it's me.
Oh, yay.
Aloha, everyone. Dr. Robert Kakalia with Kamakani Ka'ilikoa. Originally, I'm one of the original members of the Hui, and that was originally under the Knights of Rizal Maisa Ohana chapter. And at that time, the alignment was to continue the legacy of Dr. Jose Rizal, specifically the work that he performed in Dapitan, where he was exiled. And so we have a garden at the Filipino consulate in that represents that legacy. Thank you.
I think we skipped over Ati actually.
So Ati
Okay.
and then Hunter.
Sorry.
All right. Aloha, everyone. I'm Ati Jeffers Fabro. I'm currently working with the National Park Service, the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, and focusing on Makalapa Parks. So public park in the middle of a lot of redevelopment next to public housing. Lots of interest in the group and great group to be a part of. I guess Robert K is next.
No, I already went. So that's Kukui next, I guess.
Hunter's
no.
next.
Hunter. Yeah.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Hunter Hevelin. I'm a food systems planner, and my firm is called Super Assistance, and I've been involved in garden education and design with schools and public spaces and urban agriculture policy and research work. So I think I might be supporting part of this effort with some geospatial analysis, but also have a lot of background in both the design, education, installation, community organization building around it. So happy to join y'all. I've had conflicts for most of the previous meetings, but it's free today.
James Rick.
Hi, everybody. My name is James Rarick. I was also driving, but just parked. I am consultant working with Hawaii Public Health Institute on doing some installation of community food gardens in for Hawaii Public Housing Authority sites, and we're now also adding another site in Ewa Beach, which is part of St. Francis affordable housing. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jason. I work on food systems issues for the City and County of Honolulu in the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I'll pass it to Jesse. Oh, looks like Jesse has she's talking to someone else, so we'll go to Kate.
Hi, my name is Kate Eichstead, and I work for the Department of Parks and Recreation, and I'm our Community Gardens Coordinator for our city program. Thanks. And the next is Kukui.
Hello, everybody. Hui. Nice to be here. From Waianae, Oahu, Ma'o Organic Farms, and just reflecting on our Mo'oku Auho and that, Ma'o started in a garden called Ho'aina Omaka. And today, our Piko'i is sort of connected to Auntie Alice Greenwood, who is a revered kupuna, and was an amazing organizer and protector of this idea of food nurturing communities. So I just want to uplift Uncle Gigi and Auntie Alice. Mahalo.
Mahalo Kukui. My name is Lindsay Ilagan. I'm calling in from Hi-Fi as well. I come to this space really working on kupuna things. So looking at policies, program systems to support healthy aging and mitigating disparities that kind of accumulate over the life course. And so really excited to be here with you folks to start creating these community conditions to support all of us as we age and seeing where we can do more age inclusive activities. Mahalo.
Aloha, everybody. I think it's my turn. I'm Paul Arinaga, founder and executive director of Grow Good Hawaii. We're focused on urban agroforestry, or I should say urban agroecology. I'm kind of continuing a project I started about 2 or 3 years ago called the Go Native Project, to which we are encouraging people to grow more native Hawaiian and canoe plants in their urban landscaping. And we've just started in May a really big project in agroforestry to build up and reinforce networks of backyard growers in Waianae and Waimanalo. Nice to be here.
Hello, my name is Paulo Flefine. I'm with a nonprofit called Name Ki'ia, and we are just starting another organization on Maui called Ke'oloho, which will be a mental health and resiliency center for the wildfire survivors. As part of the initiative there in Ka'anapali, our goal is to open up community gardening space that can help the survivors recover from the tragedy, and then also work with folks like Pu'ukukui watershed and maybe do some reforestation starting from the garden to get to the mountain. I'd also like to thank Kauka, Robert Kakalia. He was part of my organization and had initially introduced us to this group. So thank you, Robert, for that. And thank you all for letting me be here.
Next is Ro. Are you on the call?
Yep. I know, probably hard to see all the faces. I'm Rowella Faranda. I'm the Deputy Director for Hawaii Public Health Institute. I'm joined this community because I come from a long line of Filipino farmers who made a living off of farming, and I just have a love for farming and gardening and interested in how we can hui together.
Aloha everyone, my name is Shannon Tanaka. I'm the Early Childhood Education Program Specialist at Department of Health. I'm here because I see the importance of connecting food gardens with early childhood. And currently I'm working on a early childhood mapping project with Policy Map to connect providers with local farms in their area. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Tina Lau, and I am the Oahu Master Gardener Coordinator. With our program, we train volunteers to or about horticulture, and then the volunteers then help us to have a larger or greater reach, a wider reach into the community to help them grow garden plants.
We'll bring it back to Jesse since you were on the phone earlier or conversation.
Yeah, I apologize. Sorry, we had a disabled person that wandered into our office and started opening up the cupboards and getting stuff out. So we just had to make sure he was okay. Jesse Littman from Kokua Kalihi Valley. We're a community health center here in Kalihi. We have a food program to build connections to food, land, and culture. And I'm in this work because working with food and land is a way we can really come together and grow and build community in a difficult time. I think it brings us all together.
And then we'll finish with Leanne.
Aloha, my name is Leanne Briggs, and I have a connection with the city and county community recreational gardening program. So thanks.
Great. I'm glad we had time to do that. And we'll have opportunity later to meet and greet in breakout rooms that will actually be randomized. So they won't be in the organized by interest areas that they were last time, because we'll be discussing a different topic. So look forward to that. I'm going to share my screen again. Can everybody see that? So I actually had this Olelonoi Ao up last time, but I didn't think to, or I passed over the opportunity to actually discuss it and just briefly like share why it's up here. Makahana Kaike, it's actually part of a larger expression, but I really like this piece of it, which roughly translates to in working one learns, or in working there's knowledge. And because a lot of this is we're learning by doing. I'm new to facilitation still, I would say, and I think even with food gardens, a lot of it is it's meant to be an accessible way of growing food. It's not meant to be necessarily for a professional or, you know, even a highly hobby, you know, gardener. It could be for anyone who has little to a lot of experience. Because in doing it, we learn how to feed ourselves. We learn so much from being in our gardens. So wanted to add that here. And the agenda today, we just did the welcome circle, and we'll jump right into a presentation from Melody Halsell and Alex Narajos about the Ho'ola Aina Pili Pili and accessible gardening program that they have. Then we'll have a quick share back on the public housing garden meetings that we have with New York City's Green Thumb and Denver Urban Gardens and what we learned from them. And then, like I said, we'll have breakout group, sessions. So that will really focus in on our mission for the network, why we're prioritizing equity, and then we'll share back from those rooms before closing it off. And as usual, I will be able to stay on another 30 minutes at the end for any carryover spontaneous conversation if people want to stay on from 3 to 3:30. So as a quick test here, I just want to see if this Mentimeter works, but you can either take your phone camera and scan the QR code you see on your screen, or you can click on this link that I'm putting into the chat right now. And you'll have the option to provide 1 to 5 responses to 2 questions. The first is, what are some values that you think this network holds based off of your experience here so far and your observations? Maybe you're new and it's based off of the last 15 minutes. And then you can also answer the second question, which is, what values should this network aspire to have? So regardless of what we hold, what should we be aspiring to? And once you submit a response, you should see a word cloud form. I'm going to submit it myself so I can see. Oh, wait, is it working for people?
I think that, Anna, you might have to log in to the Mentimeter and then show it on this screen.
Okay, you know what? We're not going to spend time on this because this is why I'm doing this, just to practice. But I think you're right. So I'm going to try that for next time. Thanks, Alex.
All good.
All right, so then we'll let Melody, are you going to share a screen for this? Just get right into it.
Okay, can everyone see my screen okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. So as we mentioned, we are Ho'ola Aina Pili Pili, our accessible school and community garden, and I'll be presenting today with Alex, and she's going to start us off with our agenda for today, or our overview, I believe.
Thanks, Melody. Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm kind of wearing 2 hats in this meeting today, but I'm going to be presenting on the project that Melody and she's currently a graduate assistant, and I was Ho'ola Aina Pili Pili, which is part of the Maliola initiative. I'm now working for the city, and Melody is a PhD student in the Office of Public Health Studies and is a graduate assistant. We're going to briefly talk about the overview of the initiative and of the garden, the design and implementation of the garden, its impact on the community, and share some additional resources. So Maui Ola Initiative is a Provost awarded program at UH Manoa focused on holistic health. It includes these 3 strands, which are community, movement, and well-being. And throughout the last, what is it, Melody, 4 semesters, we've had free workshops for the community to plug into these themes. So we've had an awesome Native Hawaiian personal trainer who does a virtual personal training program named Palikekua Wellness. And then we also have had Dr. K, who's a Native Hawaiian therapist and counselor, and she has done some really awesome professional and relational well-being workshops for us. So Maoli Ola Initiative is the name of the overall initiative, and then our garden site is named Ho'ola Aina Pili Pili, and we've roughly translated this to mean Ho'ola, or to heal, or to restore, or to give life. Aina, land, or that which feeds, and then Pili Pili is the name of the smaller land division, or the ili, that the garden is located on. It's kind of sandwiched in between the College of Ed campus on Metcalf, also shared by UH Lab School's campus. These are just some photos of the garden site. Melody can talk more, but her PhD research is about universal and inclusive design for people with disabilities, including people with dementia and Alzheimer's and their caregivers. And so the garden site is designed around including those folks. I think you can go to the next slide, Melody. So an accessible garden site, we think includes these things, including promotes an AINA-based learning space, is accessible and inclusive, creates space for intergenerational learning, healing, and equity, access to plants for food, for tea, for la'au lapa'au, promotes leadership, focuses on relationships and social interaction, and is dementia friendly for not only the people with dementia or Alzheimer's, but also for their caregivers. And we in this group, I think, are familiar with these benefits, but these are just some of the benefits of gardening. We welcome everyone and anyone from the community, and have had people like had babies on the site, to kapuna, to folks in wheelchairs, lots of inclusive design for all kinds of people with all kinds of abilities. And then as part of our public health priority, we just wanted to point out some of these facts. In 2030, they estimate that 24% of Hawaii's population will be age 65 and older, which is 5% higher than the national average. And by 2040, 27% of Honolulu's population, or more than 1 in 4 residents, will be over the age of 65. And so this universal design makes it easier for older adults, but also in turn makes it easy and accessible for everybody to use. And so the purpose of our garden is that all people, regardless of age and ability, must see themselves reflected in the healing space of a community garden. And I think this graphic on the left is a good way of showing how our garden includes equitable design. And then the picture on the right is some of the folks who have visited our garden. And as you can see, there's folks of all different ages and ranges of ability. And part of our garden's mission is to reduce barriers to inclusion, which means understanding the relationship between the way people function and how they participate in society, which includes some of these factors below. And I think Melody is going to discuss some of the design implementations.
Thank you, Alex. I'll just stay on this slide for 1 second because as she mentioned, I'm a PhD student in public health, and my research is on the design and implementation of a dementia-friendly garden, or an inclusive garden for people with dementia and their caregivers. And that goes beyond just physical access, but in order for like our kupuna and people with dementia and their caregivers to be included, it's also important to look at other factors such as attitude, communication, even transportation. And these are some things that we've all tried to address over time at our garden programming as well. And these are also, by the way, from the CDC. So CDC identified these barriers to inclusion. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of our design strategies. And a few of you might have either visited our garden before or seen this presentation before. So feel free in the end to chime in with any of your comments or feedback. On the left is a picture from when we started our design. We met with, we actually work with Dr. Summer Mauna Kea, who's a professor in the College of Education curriculum design, the curriculum studies program. And we met and put together like the initial proposal for this in December of 2021. And in March of 2022 is when we started our design and build. So it's now at our 2-year and 4-month mark of the start of our garden building. And we wanted to be intentional with our design, which I'll show you some of those strategies moving forward. As well as the garden design itself, part of my research has been working on an accessible garden checklist. So in the accessible garden checklist, these are the priority areas that basically we call it for ensuring that the garden site is inclusive or accessible and ways to remove barriers to inclusion. So I included all of these strategies in the checklist, and I can share that as a resource after as well. So the priority areas that I'll talk about are the accessible entrance, access to the garden beds themselves, which include raised garden beds and accessible pathways. Having safety, which is a really big priority in some of the research about the benefits of gardening, and then especially for people with disabilities or older adults. Sensory and the benefits of the sensory components of a garden space. And then also being intentional with what you plant, like planting Hawaiian plants and Pacific Island plants, and we plant a lot of things that are for food, tea, and medicine for uses in our garden. And then finally, the final piece is my research continuing on the dementia-specific components. So for the accessible entrance, some of those things that we wanted to have include having access to ADA or handicap parking spaces, being close to public transportation route, having access to restroom facilities, which we have 3 bathrooms on site. And in front of the portable on the, it's on the left of this picture, but the right of our garden, there is a ramp in the front so that people in wheelchairs or walkers would be able to use that ramp and access the restrooms. And then also if there's fencing or a gate, there is an accessible entry. So just some of those strategies. Our priority 2 was access to the garden beds. So we were intentional with building vertical gardens. We actually wanted to do where we had enough of our supplies to create 12 raised garden beds. And they're all minimum of 2 feet high or about 24 to 32 inches so that people in wheelchairs and standing can easily access and participate in any of our INA-based activities. And then our beds we have 8 garden beds that are 4 feet by 4 feet wide, and we have 4 that are 4 feet by 12 feet wide. And that all allows there to be a 2-foot reach to the center of the bed from all sides of it. And we also have another like low-cost vertical garden design on the right. And we have a little video demonstration in the end of our slides that you can take a look at. This slide just shows a little about those recommended measurements for the raised beds and then for the accessible pathways, which I'll show you on our next slide. So for the accessible pathways, we wanted to make sure they were very wide enough and aligned with ADA guidelines, minimum of 3 feet wide, which is how our spacing is in between all of our garden beds. And then the center aisle is 6 feet wide. And we have an ADA accessible mat material that we ordered intentionally to have the space be accessible by people on wheelchairs or walkers. It's also very useful for wheelbarrows and other supplies and getting around. And then our width around our garden bed is the 4.3 feet wide. This slide shows some of the safety components that we wanted to include. So we have seating, which we have our 4 picnic tables. And then recently, one of the Girl Scouts troops that uses our site sometimes as a community site, they built a bench that also has arm support and back, like a regular style bench, so that more people might be able to sit more comfortably if they're not as comfortable or safe in an open backed seating like the picnic tables. We also have shade. So we have a lily koi shade structure that's like a natural shade tent. And then we also have in our center of our garden, a central shade structure so that people can enjoy our space. Even in the sun, it won't get too hot if you're in the shade at least. Being intentional with your layout, having accessible or adapted tools, and then making sure that you have access to water, to storage, or if you have a shed. and thinking about ways to remove barriers and obstacles that might include roots and rocks and things in the pathways that you might have to clear away. And then also just the community integration as a point of safety. And then this slide talks a little about the sensory elements. So we started off planting, we actually have a lot growing right now, but we wanted to have plants that can be used for food. We have a lot of Hawaiian plants, and we also have sensory garden beds in our garden. So we have herbs growing and flowers, and this is just ways to make sure that our garden site has different colors, smells, brings in butterflies and bees, all of those like pretty nice things, some of these strategies for that. And then my final priority area in the checklist and what my research is looking at is a dementia-friendly garden. So for folks living with a neurological condition such as dementia, plants and gardens provide a connection with the natural world. Gardens offer carers much-needed respite, and people living with dementia a safe space to socialize and maintain their physical and mental well-being. So looking at a dementia-friendly garden or a garden that can be inclusive for people with dementia, and also a place for their caregivers who might also benefit from the positive health benefits of a garden space as well. And in the checklist, and then in my research, I'm going to be testing the usability of the checklist with caregivers and people who have experience with people with dementia. And then I'm also going to interview key leaders and stakeholders in the community about what are barriers and enablers to implement a good community garden site that could be kind of like our site, that's more inclusive for people with dementia and their caregivers moving forward. Oh, and yeah, just to add, we were added as a strategy to the Hawaii 2035 State Strategic Plan on Alzheimer's disease and related dementias as a strategy. So it's something that people are kind of starting to see an interest in as well. And this is a little picture of our garden site today. It's actually not as green as that picture on the left, but we do water every day or every other day. So it's still growing and flourishing and has our flowers and things like that. And the picture on the right is from a drone that one of our community members, he took these photos for us, which was really awesome. And I'm going to turn it over to Alex to talk a little bit about our community feedback and impact so far.
Yeah, I think that these numbers may actually be increased a little bit, but as of maybe 2 months ago, we've had around 600 participants, and actually Anna is in that picture on the left. And then we've had about 30 community organizations and have made a lot of community connections, including this picture on the right is actually James, I believe, James building garden beds at a residential housing site using some of our design elements. And I think Melody, or in talking with James and Hi-Fi and Melody, I believe that they've also built a site at another home near Punch Bowl, but maybe James or Alice can confirm if that's true. And then like Melody mentioned, we're mentioned in the state strategic plan for on Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Oops. And then these are just some quotes from the survey that we give after our work days. People have said that watching the community come together to work on the garden was really beautiful, that the garden is open to the community to malama and harvest anytime, which is true, and that they've learned more about growing their own food, loved learning about AINA-based opportunities for kapuna with dementia, especially the significance of having the sensory plot with vibrant colors and alluring sets. And then when we ask the question, what does an accessible garden mean to you? These are some of the answers. I'll just read a couple of them. An accessible garden means a garden that allows all individuals an opportunity to malama aina, a garden that's easy to reach and inclusive for all, and that it's a garden that allows for individuals of all abilities, ages, and contextual knowledge to engage with and to connect to.
And we actually are having our next community day tomorrow. So I know it's short notice, but they're going to be every second Saturday from 9 to 11. And if you're interested, tomorrow we're going to be doing talking about the moon phases and then also harvesting kalo. But we actually do have a lot of kind of age friendly or people of all ages that come to our community work days now. So we have Keiki, Kupuna, and students from UH or the community around or people and their friends that join, which is really nice. And then this next slide, we have also finalized our supply and resource guide. So if you're interested, you can use the QR code or this link to or send me an email if you want to join our mailing list, and I can email you a copy of the supply and resource guide. We've also printed out copies as well, so that's possible if you want to visit our garden or want a hard copy of this. And it shows the vendors that we use, the materials, and a few resources and links to basically how we designed our garden site, the pathways, the beds, the shade structure, and that kind of thing. And then I just want to say mahalo to Summer and Alex. It's actually really awesome to present with Alex again because she has her new role, but I'm happy because we work together a lot on these programs and the garden, which is looking really beautiful. And then the rest of these slides, if I'll put them in the link so that you can have them. I have additional resources as well if you want to take a look. Here are some discussion questions if we have time. And then just about the future research, some plants that we're growing, things like that. So I'll put that in the slide as well. I mean, I'll put that in the chat, these slides.
Thank you so much, Alex and Melody. And I can also follow up via email when I do the post-session email. I'll add the slides to that, as well as the recording and the resource folder, which has everything in there for today's session, today's convening.
Yeah, before we have question and answer time, I'm wondering if James wants to share anything about his kind of like how he took this design and is implementing it in community sites moving forward and for residential housing for seniors. So I think that's a really awesome extension of this type of inclusive design. If you want to share anything, James. Or did he leave? Oh, he might not be here anymore.
I think he was having technical difficulties.
I'm here. I'm just playing with my phone. Yeah. Sorry. See if I can get myself on the picture here. Yeah, we have. You're right, Alex. We have expanded. We installed 2 more boxes and a couple of new boxes, or they're actually the cattle troughs, which was a design that we got from the master gardeners up in Manoa. So I love the fact that we're kind of sharing these ideas. And so we've got 2 buildings, one that's across from Ma'ala Park, Kalani Hui building. And these are all buildings that are for kupuna, designated for kupuna and people with disabilities. And then we expanded and did this other site at Punch Bowl Homes, which is the original public housing building, the first one that was built. And it has a lot of space, and we're hoping to do some expansion there fairly soon. And then the other thing is we've decided it would be a good idea to also see if we could have a site that's not in a HPHA facility necessarily. So we're looking at installing some at another kupuna, housing for kupuna in Eva Beach. That's Franciscan homes. It's run by the St. Francis. So it's a private, affordable housing for the kupuna in that area. And, you know, it's been great. The design has been worked really well. However, I will say, and I think there'll be some discussion about this, you know, it's not cheap to install. The design uses Trex boards, which are, you know, are expensive, but will hold up for a long time, we hope. It's a pretty easy, if I can build it, it's got to be pretty easy to build. But it does take resources and labor, and I think that's an important topic for us going forward. Is, you know, what can we do as a network in securing those resources? You know, and so I think there'll be some more discussion about that today and in future meetings, I'm sure. But I really appreciate that, and the resource guide is excellent. One of the things that I was tasked to do is to put together a guide for working specifically within the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, you know, administration and management to in places where they would let us come in and do the gardens. And we've, as I've designed that, the link to the resources and Ho'ili Aina Pilipili resources and information on their website is really an important part of that guidebook. So that's about all I'll say at this point. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, Alex had to leave, but if anyone has any questions for me, or we can go to the next discussion topics.
Yeah, we can discuss this point on accessible gardens and any questions from Melody at this time. I think we've got about 10-15 minutes.
Let me just
Melody
here we've been looking at, and when I say we, I think Hi-Fi and some of Hi-Fi's partners, about what are the indicators that we should be trying to collect information on in terms of the impact of the garden. And you've touched on those in some of your questions and research. And that's another area I think for this network is to think about, what are the measures of success for us as we, hopefully are able to promote more and more people getting access to and involvement in gardening. But what are we, and how is the best way to collect that through surveys or whatever survey questions? I think that's going to be really important for us in terms of showing the impact of the work going forward. So I was happy to hear you talk about that. I think that's something that we would really, as a group, it's good to share those. Any information that's coming in on the impact that the gardens are having on the people that are doing the gardening.
I agree. Thank you.
Hey, could I ask
Melody,
a question?
Dr. Robert.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Robert. I'm actually a caregiver for a dementia and Alzheimer patient. And so I'm curious, do you collect data that record the effects of your garden on that population? And I'm curious what your numbers are with those types of participants that are afflicted with dementia, and how you would measure that impact. Mostly because I know that Hi-Fi has been attempting to lobby and to get gardening as a prescribed therapy to address mental illness. And so I'm really, as a caregiver, I appreciate what you're doing, and I'd be really curious to see what kind of data you've collected thus far.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a great question. So at this point, I have not collected data yet on having people with dementia in our garden site, but I think that's going to be a next step. So I'm kind of doing, for my PhD research, I'm using a knowledge to action framework to show, like, this is how we should design and implement a garden that would be safe and inclusive. And then say, oh, here we have we call a I don't remember the term, but basically a non-medication intervention for people with dementia and their caregivers is this type of approach. And we want to be able to show that having these benefits, or show people using the garden does have benefits by doing maybe, say, like an 8-week program, and we have horticulture therapy or activities or things like that for people with dementia and their caregivers. But up until this point, in the research I've looked at, there are studies that have been done on people with dementia and people with neurodisabilities in garden spaces. So one of my studies is looking at those interventions on their caregivers as a literature review. And that's how I got a lot of these strategies within our garden site and the design. And they do, sometimes they use biomedical markers. So they'll do pre-post tests, and they'll also either take your blood or do some sort of brain scan before and after the person participates in the garden site, as well as observation data. So there are small scale studies out there that have been done, and I think it would be ideally that's something that I can do in my next step moving forward. But I think that would be great to show, as you're saying, that there are benefits to gardening, there's proof of it, and we need to have these interventions be prescribed. So if that answers your question, I hope.
Wow.
Melody, would you be able to give us an idea roughly of how much more in cost making inclusive garden ads? Because I think you at the beginning of the presentation, a lot of really great infrastructure was shown, but I was sort of concerned at the cost, and one doesn't want to cut corners, but at the same time, cost is always an issue, right?
Agree. And we do have like a little estimate budget. So I can send that to you because I don't have it on me right now. And James also has a version of his budget now. What he did that's a little different from our garden beds is our gardens are 5 levels high. I don't know if I can show you. So, and he made them 4 levels high. So ours are the minimum. We kind of wanted to dig it into the ground and have it be a minimum of 2 feet high, but ours are a little bit over. They're like 30.
Oh, Melody's frozen for me, at least.
Yeah, it froze for me as well. Give it another few seconds here. Okay, we will come back to this when yeah, that's a really good question. I think the guide even has little dollar values on it, right? So and I think the intention is also to make it really easy to find these resources. Like you can go to Home Depot and grab them, but I will add that depending on how far you go with the accessibility and how universal it really is, or how many beds you're making that are accessible, the price can really change. We did a little cost breakdown of our raised bed at Foster Community Garden, and oh gosh, it was like, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars. But they also paved, they graded and paved and created an accessible stall, and they have a special kind of raised bed that is a wheelchair can roll underneath. And then they added the soil, and then they created a new spigot and irrigation space. And so there's a lot more cost that went to that one bed, 100 square feet bed. But that's also trying to meet certain city standards. That's might be different than what Ho'ola'aina Pili Pili was doing.
I think, I see Melody's back, but I think it would be useful to know sort of what's the minimal configuration and then, gradations there from there on up, sort of. But
yes, I agree. And actually, I don't think when it comes to ADA compliance, there isn't explicit steps or rules for how to be compliant for a community garden or for a garden. There's campsites, there's other recreational activities that are more detailed, but I think our Department of Design and Construction has had to sort of create a design that would be in their best guess compliant with the rules. And then I'm sure it just depends on who's offering that service, what standard they're held to as well. So Melody, is she back?
Yes. Okay. I'm not sure if I have anything to add, except I can touch base with you about our budget. And like I said, James has maybe the version of his budget because he made 1 to 2 beds at each site, whereas we made the 12. So ours was a little bit bigger. And just to add, if you can get community support and/or partnerships, that might be key, because we partnered with Kalaheo High School's woodworking shop, and I believe they purchased the wood and donated it to us after they helped cut it to the sizing we needed. And that was part of our budget as well, was this kind of partnership where they're willing to donate materials for the good of the garden site.
Right. Well, thanks a lot for any information you can provide.
It was a couple weeks ago.
I would like to add one thing about the height and the size. The beds take a lot to fill them up. So that also is, you got to include the costs of the soil, and we were able to use free compost that we were able to get from a site, but then we also use coconut coir and some cinder and some other things. And because of the volume of that, that was costly. I did note that the Foster Garden accessible gardens have very shallow beds, and then I don't know what repercussions they'll have in terms of the soil, losing its some of its fertility, and it's also you got to keep it pretty wet. I mean, our beds have held up really well. So the advantage of having that nice deep bed is that the plants have done really well, and you can see that at the lab school site as well. But that is a consideration because that's an expense if you don't have access to those materials. So
I'm going to take this opportunity to share the working group spreadsheet because there have been questions about, there's been an email thread shared out to people who are interested in accessible gardening, which you can, put your name on this list in multiple areas, add your email address, and we can have these conversations ongoing outside of these monthly calls. And then if interested, even setting up a separate call for those who are involved in a particular interest area. That might be an option to discuss funding or the cost of raised garden beds or accessible gardening design. And I hope that we can even get folks from Department of Design and Construction to share a little bit about how they determine their design for Foster. So that could be something that would happen in that space possibly. Any other questions for Melody or before we move on? Alrighty, well, thank you so much again, Melody. It's really good work that you're doing, and that guide is going to be so useful. I already know. I'm going to share my screen again here. So, wanted to briefly share that we spoke with Denver Urban Gardens and New York City's Green Thumb about their public housing gardens. They help run gardens on multiple sites, including public housing sites. And I've put the notes on the slides and I'll share that out afterwards if you want to go back and see what was talked about and what we learned from them. And then I have their websites there too. But in the interest of time, we'll just move on to the next thing here. So we're in a really interesting period right now for Hui Māla. And I invite anyone from Hui Māla to interrupt me and help explain this if helpful. But we are considering how to reorganize and create a governance structure and how to make decisions in general. And because of this, I think it's also helpful for this statewide network, this monthly convening, to be considering collectively what we want our mission and vision to be, what our values are. I did get the Mentimeter to work, so maybe if we have time at the end, I'll pull that up again. But and at this kind of growth point, I want to return to this idea of prioritizing equity in this network and what that means for us. And we have conversations about gardens at public housing sites, about accessible gardening. We're orienting already around these ideas of equity and inclusion. So today is just to start that conversation, and then I'm hoping the next meeting will be in person, location to be determined, but almost certainly on Oahu for those who are on the island. Apologies once again. But we want to have an in-person meeting where we can discuss collectively our common agenda and common goals, and in that spirit of commonality, understanding, having a shared understanding of what we're doing, we also want to have a shared understanding of what equity means. Right? It's a really important term. It's been used in lots of ways, and sometimes it's been co-opted and not used in its what it actually means. And so it's important to return to what I think the heart of equity work really is. So and this is funny, I smiled at the slide on Alex and Melody's presentation because of the picture of people accessing fruit from a tree, because I created this graphic for an equity training that I co-facilitated with Lala Nuss for the city and county, because it's so helpful to kind of see what equity means within context of like equality, as well as justice and liberation. And it reminds me of, it's a similar image. So someone had the same thinking there. But so to start, we understand equality. It's evenly distributed tools and assistance. So in this case, there are, people who have the same height ladder to access the system, or in this case, the ulu tree that is not serving everybody equally, but they have equal tools. And we situate that with equity, where people are provided custom tools that identify and address inequality, right? So they have different ladders which reach similar opportunities, and in this case, the ulu. While equity aims to ensure that all people have equal opportunity, it also ensures that we're not creating unequal burden or impact at the same time. And I really like to situate equity as a step towards justice and liberation, and justice being sort of the process of fixing the system to offer equal access to both resources and opportunities. Justice is often interchangeable with equity. Both are an outcome and a process, right? And this image does well to kind of highlight that it is a process that needs to be equitable. There's meaningful involvement of representation of all people in the process, in the decision-making, right? So we've called that procedural equity or justice. And liberation is like that final state, right? If equity and justice are the process and outcome, then liberation is the goal. It's freedom characterized by systems that support the full participation of each human and the promotion of their full humanness. So they can all access the ulu without having to even necessarily be given all these different tools. And there it is once again. So with that sort of shared understanding, with our mission and vision, that document here, I'll go back. It's this link. It's in our resource folder. I wanted to take the next, 15, 20 minutes, see when we get there, to break out into random breakout rooms so that maybe you can meet somebody you haven't met yet, and discuss what prioritizing equity looks like in terms of food gardens. So we've talked about accessibility, but what else could it mean? And just to inspire a little bit of thinking, like, what does that look like specifically in Hawaii? And you can think about, procedural equity, so how our processes and decision-making is equitable, cultural equity, distributional equity, making sure that the tools and resources or even the gardens are placed distributionally in an equal way. We can also think about intergenerational equity, right? So just to inspire some thinking there. I'm going to pause the recording and then we'll go into the breakout room.
Okay. From room 2, Lindsay, could we please? I think for equity, we discussed beyond equity as well. So it's the land access and as well as those gardens accessibility for people with all abilities, sustainability, and also stability. Last thing we talk about is funding opportunities, because that really controls a lot of what we can do and where we're doing things. If there's equitable funding opportunities and sustainable funding opportunities, that will be really helpful. Lindsay, Hui, did I miss anything?
Thank you, Alice. I think a theme that was kind of pervasive through all of the things that we talked about was like this kind of co-ownership or co-leadership with community members. And so not us kind of dictating what it should look like, but really meeting the community where they are. And I know that's an overused phrase, but really creating opportunities for them to take the lead.
And I forgot about the word liability. That has come up in every conversation when we were trying to enter a space. What liability waivers or information basically is prevent problems.
Yeah, and I think we were just kind of getting to the part where we felt liberated. And that, it's like we have to share there is liability, but we have to share in the kuleana to ensure equity and access to gardens for everyone. And that means we have to partner and take risks together. We started to talk about, how we might be able to fund this and using health outcomes as, the metrics. I think what was beautiful about Ho'ola'aina's presentation is that, there's a benefit to the society at large. Not just the actual health outcomes or the accessibility, in the increase in accessibility, but the ideas, the innovation, the ike, that gets generated from, sitting with a problem. So I think we ended up in a solutions place, even though the liabilities part felt pretty heavy. We came to a place where we felt, I think, powerful and empowered, and that we can do this, but we have to take kuleana for this wherever we're sitting.
Thank you, room 2. Room 3, Dr. Robert Kakalia, Hunter, James, and Jesse.
You're good with the words, Hunter, if you want to start.
Go ahead, Jesse.
All right. Well, Robert actually brought us to the liberation space that we got excited about. We were talking about equity, and then we went down the path of issues with public housing and how many have policies around not planting on property, but that there's not a legal grounding or legal basis behind that. And Robert brought up how there's actually a stronger legal basis to grow and gather cultural plants and foods. And we talked about the potential to do that and create a dynamic where the policy that restricts people from planting is put against the actual legal standing people have to grow food and to grow their cultural foods, to just kind of change the narrative, and how that would be a form of equity and liberation. That's how I got it. Robert, you got a different angle on that?
No, that's absolutely right. We as Native Hawaiians to this place, we have a very distinct right to access and practice our native culture. And part of that is growing and consuming our canoe plants. And so, and it also contributes to our overall health. So I think it's a worthwhile thing to look into as a possibility of getting native plants into public spaces and public housing specifically. Mahalo.
I would just add, I think the other pieces we talked on were the sort of spatial access, site design, as well as the types or forms of gardening that people are interested to pursue. That not everybody's model of garden looks Cartesian and has plots that are individual, but for some folks that is what it looks like. So thinking about what the distribution of those forms are that enable the different individual or collective work.
Thank you, room 3. Yeah, it's we have this allotment style model in our program, and it's just one of many. And just to reflect on both room 2 and room 3 on this idea of what food gardens look like, and like if we're actually aiming for liberation and beyond just equal access and equity, it's that land back piece. Like it's it's access to land. This work can reach that point. It's even if it seems far away in a lot of ways, it's all related. And then room 4, that's Ati, Melody, and Tina.
I guess I can start and summarize. I brought up, when we started with the equity, and I just put out the question about, equity means, the whole spectrum of accessibility and just the whole homeless. How are they introduced into this whole concept? How do we create this space for them that they can participate in? And so that's where some of the discussion went and talked about, places where we can create space for them to create that respect. These gardens are places of respect. And a lot of people feel that way, others maybe not. How do you develop that culture? With folks that have it the worst, the people that have it the best. So yeah, Tina, Melody, you have anything to add to that?
Well, regarding the homeless issue, it's a concern of mine how to reach these populations. How do you, get in touch with them to give them access, tell them about it. And I mentioned that there was a program with IHS. I looked it up. It's called the Urban Agriculture Program, where these homeless people can actually go in and use it as a kind of a therapeutic garden. And I'm not sure. Yeah, they are growing food as well with hydroponics and aquaponics and traditional growing systems. So these individual gardens are really important in giving access to these underserved communities. And then you also talked about the garden you're working with, Ati.
Yeah, I mentioned Makalapa Park, Anna, and how it seems to be kind of a potential hotspot for, maybe demonstrating really good stuff, especially with gardens as a part of the whole plan, but really planning for a community with this in mind, and how this community is right now and how this community will move on in the future. The resiliency and sustainability of it all. I think that's really important. And that's, on your way to liberation, when you have that type of, those barriers aren't as big as they are right now.
That's interesting that you bring up the IHS Urban Ag program, because it was Alex or Melody, one of you two, suggested reaching out to Taking Root. I think that's one and the same, because so far this, we're inviting more and more people into this statewide, call, but we don't have that representation yet on organizations that are working with the houseless population in the garden realm. So I am going to follow up with them to hopefully have a meeting, but maybe that's something that we can consider like a sort of working group and invite others in the space. So I'll let y'all know how that works out, and maybe we can get more discussion around that going. So thank you all so much for the share back. I'm taking fervent notes. I'm going to share screen just to wrap this up. And let's see. For today, and like I said, I will be on for another 30 minutes after for a spillover conversation, but there is a form. It's a survey. Many of you have already taken this, maybe all of you already have, but I will send this in the follow-up email. Please continue to, or if you're new to this network and haven't had a chance to fill out this feedback form, please do it. It helps me with finding availability, finding or getting any feedback on how this is being facilitated, and also baseline data on like who our participants are, so we know how to who we are and how to expand or how to change going forward. Resources, these will be in the email, the Ho'olaina Pili Pili resources that Melody and Alex shared. That working group spreadsheet will be in the email. And then I just want to take the last few minutes. Actually, before I do, next convening will be in August. We're hoping for it to be in person, so keep an eye out for that invitation. I'm thinking August 9th. And then, just to wrap it up, any upcoming events, any job postings, any announcements from anyone in the room, please, this is the moment to share. Alice.
Thank you. Hi-Fi and Department of Health has confirmed a partnership to co-apply EPA Community Change Grant up to $20 million. and one of the program will be community food garden related. So hopefully we're aiming for $5 to $6 million for community food gardens. And this is a very rough design of the program. We just had an idea yesterday, which is community food gardens for WIC families, women, infant, children, households. So the first year there will be local fresh produce incentives. So basically like boxes from FarmLink or local produce as incentive for those WIC families to pick up. But as to encourage them to participate in educational workshop that is happening at the pickup site, which will be teaching them how to garden. There will be cooking classes as well as nutrition, how to eat healthier, certain different initiatives, including maybe even breastfeeding. And this will be the first year. During this first year, we're also doing assessment from the participant, what kind of gardens you would like to have, what space, which area, and hopefully the second year and the third year will be engaging those families and enabling them have access to their own food garden so they can garden their own fresh food. And second year, third year's focus will be more of how to cook, how to prepare, how to preserve the food. Because right now with the home cottage law, the home cooks, they have the ability to legally sell their preserved product or different product, through third party or website. So this is a way we're trying to not only just give fresh produce, but also have them have the access, the space to guard their own produce and then turn that into a profit and possibly workforce development piece. And then the transition is to have those families, once their children are older than 5 years old, we'll transition them to our farm to school, which is another program that they can continue. And then there will be vacant spot for the newer WIC families. So this is just an idea, and we really need community partners. If you think this idea is silly, there's different ideas to make it better, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address, I will pop it in the link. We're trying to submit this grant by first week of September, but in August, we're really trying to confirm all collaborating entities which will enter in the partnership, and Hi-Fi can allocate funding to our collaborating entities. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Alice. Any other announcements? Any job postings? I think someone had mentioned in an email to me about that.
Alice, I would love to follow up with you on that effort. Particularly just seeing if there's any assessments that have been done about the educational demand, because I just wonder, in the same way that if food security is framed as being addressed by gardens and nutrition and cooking, I wonder if it may run the risk of just remember a lot of other programs that focus on wealth building, we're about money management as opposed to addressing some of the upstream issues. So
that's
just
great
thinking about
idea.
how make sure it's not perceived in the wrong way and it's actually addressing what people are needing. But happy to chat more on it.
Thank you, Hunter. Yeah, we were rough planning, the educational workshop will be hybrid. So there will be video uploaded to people who is working or homebound who doesn't have access to attend in person, so they can still access those materials. But I agree. Thank you for bringing up other topics. I'd love to connect with you after this. And Jesse, for this grant, they also have funding for complete streets, like certain quick build, transportation support, more pedestrian, bike lanes, even electric vehicle purchase, all those. So if KKV is interested, please feel to reach out.
Can we do an email follow-up separate?
Yes.
Talk story. Okay. I'll go stick my email in the chat just in case you don't have it.
Well, that wraps up the hour. Thank you
I
all
think
so much.
there's something in the chat.
Well, I will say goodbye to everybody who has to go. And thank you so much. If you want to stay on, I'll be here, and keep an eye out for that follow-up email with all these resources, with maybe the Master Gardener events, you know, the notes from working with Doug and New York City Green Thumb, and then also the Ho'ola'ina Pili Pili Workday. Just keep an eye out for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And Jesse,
Aloha.
I will send you emails separately.
Aloha.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Lindsay.
You know, I had a question for you while you're on. Do you know if like any employers are like worksite wellness garden champions? Like if employers give like their staff paid time to do home gardening or gardening at their work site or anything like that?
I think maybe the Blue Zones project does that at different work sites. Like for example, they'll have a Blue Zones group and then they'll do like a walking group once a week or things like that. And that'll be like an initiative in the office. I've seen that before.
Cool. I wonder what the status of Blue Zones is these days.
I've seen with the city, we have at CCSR anyway, and I don't know if this is something DPR has employed. Maybe it has. It's one of the actions in the OLA resilience strategy, and also something I think it was the previous mayor was advocating for, Caldwell, about getting city employees volunteering, and oftentimes that is doing like gardening or INA-based work.
But it has to be a volunteer, like you can't like use your
no,
work hours.
it would be during work hours. I think when I was at CCSR, there were not super frequently, but days where all the employees would go into the field and be kind of like a bonding, you know, experience, and also giving back.
Yeah, I don't know, I was inspired by our conversation around like equity. And I was like, the people who have time are usually not the people who could probably benefit the most. Like, you know what I mean? It's the time-strapped folks that, like, even if they have access to space, it's like they're commuting or they're shuttling kids or whatever it is. Yeah, so I was like, oh, it'd be awesome to like get competent, like, you know, use some of that work time, like take an hour to go do your garden. Or I think CNHA does that. Like they can take some of their day to attend to the garden outside and stuff. Anyways, just a inspiration from my group. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's all. But while I have you, I am gonna go visit Dottie soon over at Hui Māla. So I know we had mentioned her before. And so open invite if you folks want to go say hi.
I'm
going
am
for a
curious
different
what
purpose.
the status
but,
of their resilience hub. Do you know where that's at?
I don't, but I know they're like hosting a site visit for some sort of environmental group. I don't know. I was assuming that it had to do with their hub, but maybe not. Okay, well, I'll keep you posted though once that gets scheduled. I think we're looking at like either late July or sometime in August.
I know that they want to have, and like a lot of resilience hubs, to have like a garden on site, and I know Dottie's like in a million different networks and does so much, and so she doesn't have to necessarily participate, but she's, you know, feel free to share that this is a resource for that site when it comes time.
Yeah, will do.
Anything else, Lindsay?
No.
Sorry, James, we didn't get to the topic of funding, but I will in the follow-up email with that spreadsheet, you know, blast it, because I think if there's people who are really interested in that funding piece and answering the question that you had about that one funding source, that would be a good space to start that conversation.
Yeah, there's a broader question of where's the resources coming to do this, and it's nice to be thinking, well, we can put in grants and things like that that may give us some money down the road. But I'm thinking right now, I'm sure. I mean, I'm ready to start writing to organizations that I think would, could help. This whole thing around Bear is an interesting question, which I do think has to be discussed by the group. But my bigger issue, I think, is, who can, I really would like to see this group, get the nonprofit status or organized in such a way, that, for me, it's who am I asking on behalf of, I could use Hi-Fi, in the interim, but I'm just thinking, to do some fundraising around this, because these projects do, I'm ready to start expanding. We're going to try to start putting in several individual plots at Punchbowl Homes, but I know that the budget won't go very far if we build it like it using the Ho'ola and a Pili Pili model. It's expensive, and I would also, I think, like to see if I could mobilize. It's interesting, the master gardeners. I'd like to know where they are and where they're supporting it. I've met a whole bunch of masters gardeners. They've all been in Manoa, which is hardly the hotbed of places we need to be at if we're dealing with this from a health equity issue. But I would love to say, maybe check with the coordinator and say, I've got a project. I would love to have a master gardener that come and help us, in the design and implementation of this project, at a public housing site. So there's that kind of resource, which doesn't cost any money, just somebody's time or volunteerism. But then there's also the paying for the materials and things like that. So that's it. And for me, I personally don't see any problem with linking an organization to Bear if they're okay. Although I think we should be very clear, and I'm going to find this out. I might actually get a call here pretty soon today, because I want to find out, well, what comes along with that? What's Bear's expectation? Do they want to have a big sign up in front of the garden that says, this garden is supported by Bear, or how does that work, right? Because and then there's of course the big discussion about should we take money from Bear or not. And I think that's probably a worthwhile discussion to have. But again, as the group becomes more organized and formalized, this would be something that would be put in the policies or bylaws or whatever of the group, is that we have rules about taking money, sponsorship money, and those rules are blah blah blah, so those are the kind of things that I'd like to get to having that discussion. But I am hoping, and the other thing is, let me know as soon as possible when you're scheduling that meeting, because I've already told Alice I think August will be, I want to get back over there and actually start installing these gardens in August, and that means probably staying on Oahu for a longer period of time than I normally do. But it'd be good to be there in person for the next meeting and where we're going. And are you kind of waiting to see what happens with the grant before you really make any of these kind of decisions, or?
No, not necessarily. What we're waiting on is Hui Māla. We are in a shifting space. Like right now, we are about to send out a survey to members to see if maybe we should be combining Hui Māla and the statewide network, and then from there, if we kind of get a consensus about that, we can then invite the whole statewide network to be involved in governance, in decision making, in creating bylaws, and how we fund ourselves, in formalizing as a coalition or whatever it has to be like either a nonprofit or a way to get funding. So it's more contingent on that process. This USDA funding, I was supposed to find out by the end of June and haven't heard anything, so I'm not not sure. I can't really.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
No,
continue the momentum.
yeah. I mean, I think I feel like the network is that's what's holding it back right now is just becoming a little bit more formalized. I mean, you know, and the problem is if something doesn't happen fairly soon, I think people will start to drift away a little
You think
bit.
so? Okay. That's interesting feedback. I mean, I've been in networks that have been for like a year or 2 years, just learning, just presentations, just kind of getting an understanding of what's out there, what the need is. And sometimes there's that up and down of participation, but I think if that's, I would hate to see the momentum get lost because we aren't, able to access resources like you're saying. So.
Well,
But it is hard. My capacity is also very limited.
It's a good point. You don't necessarily have to formalize right away, but I do think you need to formalize what's the purpose of this meeting. This, you know, we're all on the same page in terms of, you know, our a shared understanding of what I mean, I think it's great to you know, have this discussion about equity and what does that look like, and are we going to be it? Is that what we're going to be about? Is that going to be the main focus? You know, and that's a big challenge. But it's a big difference also to being just a group that wants to promote gardening anywhere to anybody, you know. I mean, you know, yeah, maybe it's going to just take a bit of time, but maybe again, going back to and formalizing that process of how we're doing that, you know, so that everybody knows, oh, okay, we're taking time now because this. So I think going back to that, you know, shared impact, you know, whatever framework, you know, and maybe just, you don't have to do it all in one meeting, you know, just take one thing, you know, like, are we all on the same page about, you know, I mean, today's conversation, you know, I mean, for Hunter and Jesse and I and the other fellow on the breakout, to me, I mean, equity is access to the space to garden, you know, access to a place where you could garden for so many people, you know. And you know, and you know, I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? I mean, because you can't really just say, oh, it's not an inalienable right that everybody has access to a space to garden. But for places that are managing, and I always go back to what you told me early on, that you were interested in maybe seeing what could be done with county lands that are not being used. And I feel the same way about state lands that are not being used. You know, what can we do to free up those lands, you know, so that people can grow food, you know, and it doesn't have to be food on a large scale. So, you know, what do you do about all the people in an urban environment, in a public housing place where there's no space? Well, can you create space for them, you know, especially if it's public land that they're building or sitting on, you know. So anyway, I was just curious, but I would hope that maybe I'll be over there in person when you do the next meeting. It's a lot easier sometimes when you're there in person.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a hybrid option. That's too hard to manage.
Yeah. No, you're doing a great job though. Yeah. Keeping everybody involved. So anyway, all right. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thanks for being here, James.
Yeah. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.
I am still recording.
I won't take up more of your time, but I was just kind of listening in and learning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
I
stop
am
the
always
recording.
curious about like